Hello everyone, welcome to the June's Foe. I'm a little late on this. I meant to get this done a long time ago, but here it is, finally. Then I'll work on July's one. I still gotta get the reviews out for, April, May, June, July, all those months. Which, they are in the works. Maybe I shouldn't take too long on them. It's actually something I want to talk about today in this Foe. I guess you could say this is kind of like my developer's thoughts of my channel and what's been going on in my mind lately. Even though this is based on June's, platformer month, Jumping June, I think the message I have today for this month's, theme has a lot to do with what I've been dealing with this entire year, pretty much. So yeah, this is one screen platformer. Just want to go over the game really quick. It's a little casual indie platformer game that they made just to play really quick. It's literally one screen. You're just scrolling through this one screen and you're just trying to get to the end as fast as possible. Now I of course die a lot, and I have some related thoughts for that. So while you watch me die over and over again, I will go over some stuff. But yeah, welcome to Foe, and this is just the series where I just kind of talk about random stuff, or not random stuff. I try to talk about a thematic topic for like 15 minutes, but it all kind of comes out of my head. I don't really have a script or anything. The first one I ever made, I made a script with it, but I feel like what the whole point of Foe is just kind of, getting in my own head, like just getting thoughts out of my head and talking improv pretty much. And so here we go. So what do I want to talk about for platformer month for June? Well, I want to talk about how in platformers you can't be afraid, right? You can't be afraid to mess up, because a lot of the times you are going to mess up. You aren't going to be perfect. You're going to be making mistakes. You're going to fail over and over again. In the case of a platformer, yeah, you're going to die probably a lot. As you can see with me, I fall so many times, especially with just this one character. But I also want to talk about, being attached to things, and which I'll describe in a little analogy using the platformer design as well. But let's start off with, moving along, not being afraid, not being afraid of taking risks, which is also luck, right? A lot of people like to base luck on stuff, but luck and risk are the same thing, and you can't get lucky until you take risks, right? And you can't 100% know for sure what everything, that's going on. Take it for like a game, playing a platformer game. You're not gonna know how every single level is. Yeah, you can study it, understand how each level works beforehand, especially nowadays with the guides and videos. And I think that's actually great. We have the internet, right? We have the tools to plan ahead and do research. But at the end of the day, you still have to act, right? You still have to put the game in. You still have to play it. You still have to, do it. And I feel like a lot of people will watch the videos and do the research, but they'll never actually pop the game in and play it. They're satisfied after playing it. And it kind of reminds me of a story that this one monk told on a TED Talk, where he talked about a man who wanted to climb a mountain, and instead of climbing the mountain, he said, I need a plan, I need to figure out what this is about. So what he does is he goes around the entire mountain asking for people's like perspective and point of view, and what do they do, what do they see up there. And eventually he got like a story from each side of the mountain, and instead of going like, okay, let's climb the mountain, he was just like, well, I've already gotten pretty much a perspective of the whole thing, so I don't need to do it anymore, And I feel like a lot of us often fall for this. I sometimes find myself telling that story too, where I'm like, oh, well, I already know a lot about it, so, why do I need to actually go through the experience of it? And I guess this is why I struggle with a lot of the stuff I do for like the YouTube channel, especially. Sorry, I keep covering my mouth. I'm just gonna do that. I want it to be perfect all the time, so I look up things, I do research, and I'm constantly looking up guides. And at the end of the day, I end up not doing anything, because I'm like, well, I'm satisfied with all the thoughts that kind of popped up in my head. It's almost like you play it all out in your head, and then you're like, wow, that was great. Well, I'm not gonna bother doing it though, because it's kind of perfect already in my head. And I think that's a huge problem, because I feel like we're often distracted by perfectness, right? Which, you know, some people say perfect doesn't exist, or as I always say, perfect is what it is, right? Everything in life is perfect because it exists. It is in a certain concept, like it is life itself. It exists already. That's what perfect is. And either way, I think it's true. It both doesn't exist, because most of the time the thing that people consider perfect is a thing that they have, the idea they have stuck in their head. So it doesn't exist. But at the same time, I guess you could say, if you want to look at it from a more optimistic point of view, or pessimistic, I don't know, it depends on how you feel about it, that perfect world is already here. It exists. And for some of us, it is kind of miserable, you know? There's just so many variables and stuff like that. But the word perfect doesn't mean good. We just put that on there, right? It just means it's like the best form, or what's the word? Because best kind of implies that it's good too, but it's just the how can I say? It's the purest form of what it's supposed to be, right? But that doesn't necessarily mean it's good, because good is just something that we clarify, right? We decided this is what's good for me, and this is what's, you know, good for everybody else, but that's just what we're thinking of. Doesn't mean it's good for everyone else, it's just what we think it is. So is it necessarily perfect? No. It's perfectly fine for that person. So everyone has their own idea of perfect. So with that case, yeah, in a sense, perfect doesn't exist, only to that person, and who knows if it's even possible. So at the end of the day, I guess what I'm trying to say with that whole concept is, like, with a platformer game, you're not always gonna make the perfect route. You know, you're not electricity. You're not gonna be, you know, finding the quickest and safest route to get to the ground, you know, to your goal. We are humans. We make mistakes. You know, we're not perfect. There's that word again. We're not perfect, but it's okay. Because all we have to do is, you know, take those steps. Of course, you know, there are moments. This doesn't mean to, you know, be risky and, you know, gun-ho every time, headstrong, just, you know, not considering the consequences and stuff like that. But sometimes we do need to do that, you know? We can't sit there paralyzed in fear all the time. But at the same time, of course, we can't be reckless. It's that balance, and I've talked about this before in the Hades episode, where it's about balance, but also you gotta learn to embrace the chaos. Sometimes you can't always find the most balanced part of it, especially if you lack the knowledge and everything, and the skill, which is created, you know, through practicing over and over again, making mistakes. Just like in this game, I'm sure if I played it for long enough, I'd get so good at it, you know, I wouldn't have to think twice about running through this whole thing. I'd just be bam, 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 jumping all over the place. I mean, even the little time I played it, I was already mastering a lot of the platforming sections. Mastering, of course, being, you know, I feel like there's like a scientific term for mastery. It's like, I don't know what it is, because they say it's the whole 10,000 hours thing, but does that really mean mastery, or does it just mean that you're really good after 10,000 hours? I mean, you kind of should be, right? Maybe? I don't know. Depends. Again, it's morally gray at that, you know, at that point. But there was a nice analogy that came from a book that I just recently read called The 5 Levels of Attachment by Miguel Ruiz. I think that's his name. Miguel Ruiz Jr.? I forget his name. His father wrote the 4 Agreements, which I know is very popular. But I really like the 5 levels of the 5 attachment levels, because I feel like it was something I kind of quite needed, because I think that's what I've been struggling with. I've been struggling with this attachment to perfection. You know, it needs to be perfect. You know, I have to get every single little, you know, corner observed, and when that's ready, I can finally start on it. And that's why this took so long, because I was like, oh, you know, I know exactly what I'm going to say, but let me write it down first so I don't forget it. It's like, no, I ended up not even writing anything down. I just kind of just got in this chair and was just like, get it done, Michael. It's Thanksgiving, you know. You have the energy. You can do it. You finally have a day off. And that's another thing, too. I've been working 7 days a week for about 7 weeks now straight. and I've been telling myself, you know, I'm already busy, you know, I don't need to add more stuff to my plate. But that was the whole point of me doing all this stuff, is I want to add more stuff to my plate, not to be stressed out or anything, but to be, you know, productive, you know, in my perspective, of course, too, because, you know, being productive is also another thing that, you know, is dependent on the person. You know, what exactly do they want to get done? What is exactly productive to them? Someone could do nothing all day and be like, that was a productive day because I got to relax and not be stressed out, you know, on all the stuff. It just depends on the goal. And that was something that I recently read about too, where they talked about terminal goals and instrumental goals. And terminal goals being, what is your end goal? What is your main point of you going on this journey, right? What if the terminal goal for the day was to just enjoy yourself, relax? Then doing nothing is perfectly fine, right? You're super productive. You wanted to relax, you wanted to do nothing, so that means that you're very productive. But if you know, your terminal goal is to like finish a book and stuff like that, you know, writing a bunch of pages and getting stuff done, you know, that's counted as productive, right? And, you know, again, it goes back to the perfection thing. Perfection is that terminal goal, but if you make it almost impossible to complete, then it's never perfect, because you made it not perfect. You have to be realistic. And then instrumental goals is any way you go about completing it. At the end of the day, instrumental goals can be bad, because if you're being counterintuitive and ineffective with your instrumental goal, like say if your goal for the day was to you know, relax and not do anything, but then you're like, oh well, you know, I need to go to a sauna and do all this stuff, and it's like all this stuff that's kind of stressing you out, but it's an instrumental goal in order for you to relax. Then it's kind of counterintuitive, because your whole main point is to relax and you're stressing out about trying to relax. So that would be like a bad instrumental goal. You know, that makes sense, because your terminal goal is whatever you want it to be, but if you're getting in your own way to complete that goal, then you're kind of being dumb. I hate to use that word, but you're kind of being silly. You're being non-intelligent with completing your goal. But anyways, back to the 5 levels, the 5 attachment levels. The reason I had brought that up was that he mentions a little scene where he says, like, being attached to something, you know, this idea of perfection, or, you know, people that we want them to be a certain way, we get attached to these concepts and ideas. He says it's like being on monkey bars, right? Like, you can't just sit there, you know, waiting for the perfect moment, you know, to latch onto the next, you know, bar on the thing, because eventually you're gonna get tired out, right? You have to act. You have to move to the next one. And that's also, we can't get attached to the bars before us, right? We have to just know that it's the next step, you know, and move on to the next bar. Because if we stay too long on one bar, we get exhausted. And we need to learn to conserve our energy and move as much as we can. And I honestly see that in more, what's the word? What do they call that? Epidemiology, I would say. Like I wouldn't say it's epidemiology. What is it? Gosh, I'm forgetting the word, but pretty much like a long-term like way of seeing it, you know. Your heart can only beat for so long, and you can't sit there wasting, you know, of course, and that again is dependent on your terminal goal. If your goal is to, you know, get as much done, you know, and get as many feats achieved throughout your life, then you shouldn't be hesitant. You should keep going and moving along, because, you know, the more time you spend doing stuff, the more you'll achieve. You know, if you wait for the perfect moment every time, you're probably going to get less done. I mean, look at, you know, the classic example of Thomas Edison. I mean, he failed 10,000 times, but I mean, everybody knows him pretty much now because he failed 10,000 times and eventually figured it out, you know? So it's just a matter of not being attached to this idea of perfectness, and not being attached to expectations for others and yourself. You know, and you see it all the time. We get attached to expectations for, you know, our favorite things. You know, maybe like a game series. In this case, since we're talking about video games, you know, maybe a series has always been really good, and then they release a new game and you're just upset because it's not as good as the previous games. And it's like you're attached to this idea. You're like a fanatic of like, oh, the good old days, the time, you know, like pretty much like conservatives, right? But even like liberals with the government and stuff like that, like, you know, those two different kind of sides of the party, they're both attached to these certain ideas and expectations. But it's instead of just like, you know, not necessarily just, you know, rolling over and exposing your belly and be like, yeah, you know, whatever happens. You know, no, it's just more just like, okay, it's not happening, but that's okay. I'm not gonna get upset. I'm just gonna keep moving along. I'm gonna keep, you know, things are gonna keep messing up, but it's okay. I'm gonna try to figure out what the next step is. But we often get attached to these ideas so strongly that we let the emotions get to us. But I know that's easier said than done. It's easier said than done. Dang, I've already been talking for 15 minutes, huh? But I kind of want to use this, you know, part of the game as a good idea. Sometimes we're not gonna be able to see what's ahead of us, right? You know, on this level I had to explore everything. I had to clear all the fog, and I just feel like that sometimes, right? The other day I was reading a book called The Psychology of Money, and he had mentioned that his daughter, like, he understands that his daughter does not understand the world as much as he understands the world. But even he can't say he 100% understands the world, right? Maybe none of us can ever understand the world 100%. But knowing that is, like, you know, really powerful as well, right? You know, at the end of the day, he has to pay bills and do all this stuff, you know, take care of his family. But what does his daughter know? His daughter interprets that as, oh, dad's, you know, busy and doesn't want to play with me, and that makes me sad. And is she wrong for, you know, experiencing that, for thinking that? No, not at all. She's a child. She hasn't learned all that stuff, you know? And I feel like we often get, you know, we often think that just because someone's an adult, they should know all this stuff. And that's, in a sense, not really that fair, you know? I see people all the time that don't know a lot of the things that I know. Well, that doesn't make them stupid or dumb or, you know, I mean, maybe annoying because you have these expectations, but even then, it's not really their fault, you know. Yeah, you can show them the way, but it's hard doing that as well, because you know, human psychology is just can be very complicated on how to push people in a certain direction, and because you don't even know what you believe in is right, you know, in quotations. So, but yeah, he was just saying that that's how his daughter feels, like, she doesn't understand the world, but all the things that he feels, all the things that he feels like he understands the world could be totally wrong as well, because he doesn't know everything. And I feel like that's what we all struggle with. We all think we understand the world, but we really don't. Nobody does. You can read all the books in the world and you can establish your own idea of how everything works, but at the end of the day, you don't really know. Nobody knows. But eventually, when you do something enough, you can at least see the big picture. And in this case, you know, I figured out how to press the button to see the entire map, and I started using that to play through this. And you can take shortcuts, you know, now that you know so much about the game, you can take shortcuts. And I think this character is a perfect example of that. But anyways, guys, I think that's gonna be it for me today. I didn't want to go too much because I feel like I'd be here forever. But I hope you enjoyed this, hearing my thoughts on what I've been thinking about and stuff like that. I will continue to try to get these faux videos out, hopefully, and not be afraid of not being perfect, because that's really been just a big thing of mine. I just need to learn to get these out. But I hope you guys have a great Thanksgiving. I hope you had a great Thanksgiving, because this should be coming out on Friday, right after Black Friday. Take care, and I'll see you for the next one. I think I'll be doing it on Friday as well next week, and it'll be the July one. Alright, y'all. Take care. Bye-bye.